I'm 73 years old, and I want to tell you about the worst moment of my life. Not when my mother died, not when I was seriously ill, but when my 34-year-old daughter sat across from me at her kitchen table, crying, and said, "Mom, I can't be with anyone because I'm afraid of becoming you." Those words. I'm afraid of becoming you. I always thought the worst thing a child could say to you was, "I hate you." But no, the worst thing is when your daughter is afraid to repeat your life because she watched how you lived and decided that being alone is better than being like you. In that moment, I understood. I wasn't just an unhappy wife. I was a living warning. Let me go back. I married William in 1976. I was 24. He was handsome, ambitious, confident. Everyone said I was lucky. And for the first few years, everything seemed normal. Not magical, but normal. Then our first daughter, Emily, was born in 1978. And something changed. Not immediately, not obviously, but William started to distance himself. He worked late, went on business trips, came home tired and irritated. When I tried to talk to him, he'd say, "Not now, I'm tired." When I asked him to help with the baby, he'd say, "I work all day, you need to handle it." I told myself it was temporary, that when Emily got older, things would get better. Then our second daughter, Sarah, was born in 1981. And it only got worse. William wasn't a bad man. He didn't hit me, didn't cheat as far as I know, didn't yell. He just didn't see me. I was a function in his life. Wife, mother of his children, the one who cooks dinner and does laundry, but not a person. I remember one moment very clearly. Emily was 8. Sarah was 5. We were sitting at dinner. All 4 of us. I was telling a story about something that happened that day at the grocery store. William didn't even look up from his plate. Emily was listening. Sarah was listening. But he was there, but he wasn't. I finished the story. Silence. Then he said, "Pass the salt." That's it. As if I hadn't spoken at all. And I remember looking at my daughters. They were looking at me. Then at him, then back at me, and I saw it in their eyes. Pity. My own children pitied me, but I did nothing. I passed him the salt. Years went by. The girls grew up, and they watched. They watched how he talked to me like I was the help. They watched how I asked his opinion about everything, but he never asked mine. They watched how on my birthday he'd forget to buy a gift. And I'd smile and say, "It's okay." They watched me apologize for things I wasn't guilty of, how I made myself smaller, quieter, more convenient, how I disappeared. Emily was 16 when she first said something. We were washing dishes after dinner, just the 2 of us. She was quiet, then suddenly asked, "Mom, are you happy?" I froze. "Of course," I lied. "Why do you ask?" She didn't answer right away, just kept washing a plate, then said, "Because you don't look happy." I didn't know what to say, so I said what all mothers say when they don't want to admit the truth. "Adult life is complicated, sweetheart. You'll understand when you're older." She looked at me, and I saw disappointment in her eyes, not in her father, in me. Because I was lying to her. Emily left for college in 1996. Sarah followed in 1999, and suddenly the house was empty. Just me and William. I thought when the kids left we'd find each other again, that we'd have time to rebuild what was lost. But there was nothing to rebuild, because there had never been an us. There was him, there was me, but there was never us. We'd spend entire weekends not talking. He'd watch TV in the living room. I'd read in the bedroom. We were like two strangers stuck in one house. And I told myself the same thing I'd been saying for years. Emily got married in 2005. She was 27. I remember her wedding. I watched her dance with her husband, how he looked at her, how she laughed. And I realized she's happy, really glowing happy. And it was a feeling I hadn't experienced in so long I'd forgotten what it was like. The next day, as she was leaving for her honeymoon, she hugged me and whispered in my ear, "Mom, you deserve what I have." I didn't know what she meant, or I pretended not to. Sarah never got married. She dated different men for 20 years, but never stayed. In 2015, she was 34. She came home for the weekend and told me she'd broken up with another boyfriend. He was good, she said, but I couldn't stay. Why? I asked. She was silent for a long time, then looked me straight in the eye and started crying. My 34-year-old daughter sat at the kitchen table and cried and said, "Because I'm afraid of becoming you." Those words hit me like a bullet. What do you mean? Mom, I look at you and Dad, and I see two people living in one house who are miserable, and I'm afraid that if I choose the wrong person, I'll spend the rest of my life the same way. I spend years with good guys, but if I feel even the slightest shadow of what I see in your marriage, I run, because you taught me that it's better to be alone than invisible. She wiped her tears. Mom, my whole life you told me, love yourself, know your worth, don't settle for less. But I watched you, and I saw a woman who doesn't love herself, doesn't know her worth, settled for a life that makes her invisible. And now I can't stay with anyone because I'm afraid of repeating your mistake. I sat there, unable to move. My daughter had just told me I ruined her life, not by being a bad mother, but by being a bad example. I thought I was protecting my children by staying, thought I was giving them stability, family, but all I gave them was a lesson about how a woman disappears, how she makes herself smaller, how she stays silent, how she remains in a marriage that's killing her. And my daughter learned that lesson so well that now she can't love because she's afraid of becoming me. A week after that conversation with Sarah, I went to see Emily. I needed to talk to someone. We sat in her kitchen. She was making tea, and I told her what Sarah had said. Emily was quiet for a long time, then took my hand and said, "Mom, she's right." I looked at her. Tears burned my eyes. "You think so too?" "I'm happy in my marriage," Emily said. "But you know why? Because when I was 25 and I met John, I knew what I didn't want. I didn't want a marriage like yours and Dad's. So I chose someone who sees me, hears me, values me. You taught me that, but not with your words, Mom, with your life." She squeezed my hand. "You showed me how not to live, and I'm grateful for that. But Mom," she looked into my eyes, "what about you? You spent your whole life showing us what to avoid. When will you start living for yourself?" And then she asked the question that changed everything. "Mom, why did you stay?" I opened my mouth, and nothing came out, because I had no answer. All the reasons I'd been telling myself for years. For the kids. They grew up. I have no money. I could work. I made a promise. He broke his every day. What will people think? Who cares? None of these reasons were real. The real reason was simple and terrible. I was afraid. afraid of being alone, afraid of starting over. Afraid of admitting I'd spent 44 years on the wrong person, afraid that if I left, it would mean my whole life was a mistake. But sitting there, looking into my daughter's eyes, I understood something else. By staying, I was making the mistake even bigger. Every day I spent in this marriage was another day my daughters watched me and saw a woman who doesn't choose herself. That night I went home. William was sitting in the living room, watching TV. Didn't even ask how my day was. I stood in the doorway and looked at him, and I saw the next 10, 15, maybe 20 years, the same as the last 44. Silence, loneliness, invisibility. And I thought about my daughters, how they'd watched me their whole lives, how they learned not from my words, but from my actions. I always told them, love yourself, know your worth, don't settle for less. But they saw a woman who didn't love herself, didn't know her worth, settled for a life that made her invisible. And I understood. The most important lesson I can give my daughters now is to leave. Show them it's never too late to choose yourself. 3 months later, I filed for divorce. I was 68 years old. I called Emily and Sarah together, told them I was leaving. You know what they said? Emily said, "Mom, I'm proud of you." Sarah said, "Finally." Then added, "Mom, my whole life I waited for you to choose yourself. You told me to love myself, but I never saw you do it. Now I do. I'm 73 now. I live in a small apartment, alone, for the first time in my life. And you know what? I'm not lonely. For the first time in decades, I feel alive. I take painting classes, read the books I want to read, eat when I want, sleep when I want. My life belongs to me. And my daughters see it. Emily brings her kids on weekends, and they see a grandmother who's happy. And Sarah met someone last year, a good man. She called me and said, "Mom, I think I'm ready to try, because you showed me it's never too late to choose yourself. And if you could do it at 68, I can do it at 35. You gave me 2 lessons. The first, how not to live. The second, that it's never too late to start. If you're sitting in an unhappy marriage right now, telling yourself you're staying for the kids, listen to me. Your children are watching. They see every fake smile, every moment you make yourself smaller, every time you choose peace over happiness. And they're learning, not from your words, from your life. My daughter told me, "I'm afraid of becoming you." And those were the most painful words I've ever heard, but also the most important, because they woke me up. I'm 73 years old. I left at 68, and I only regret that I didn't leave at 48, or 38, or 28, but I don't regret leaving, because these last 5 years were the first years of my life when I was visible to myself and to my daughters. If you're staying in a marriage that makes you invisible, ask yourself, what lesson are you teaching your children? That you're worth being happy, or that love means disappearing? Your children are watching. What do you want them to see?